listening to Pop This, the podcast where three women talk about pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen, Andrea Gin, and Andrea Warner.
Okay, I don't even know if we've ever discussed this before, but both of you, what are your thoughts on thrifting?
Thrifting?
Yeah.
I mean, I find that as I've gotten older, I haven't been as into thrifting. I just don't have the patience for it because I feel like you need to be like relaxed, you need to have time, and you need to just be like willing to get in there and thoughtfully consider stuff that you're seeing. Like you can't just sort of do it like a sweep through of a thrift store quickly. I think if you're going to find treasures, you need to like be in the zone and be like, I don't know, like just, and I just find I just don't have the time or patience for doing that lately. I used to when I was younger.
I also feel that as I've got older, I've wanted less stuff. Like there's fewer and fewer, like, what is a treasure? That's another piece of junk, right? I don't really collect anything at all. I was quite excited. Like one of my big scores, I do still like to go look around in a thrift store. And I was in one recently and I found vintage with the old logo, a Gap sweatshirt with the big letters on it. And I was beyond excited. I mean, you know how I feel about the Gap. And I managed to find the perfect Gap sweatshirt. So,
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
That feels so good when you find you find something that means something to you.
Yeah, but it's rare. It's rare. Like I find it's getting like I find that there's something kind of meditative about walking around because things feel more acquirable in there in a thrift store than they do say if you're like going through like Holt Renfrew or something like that.
I think like I still like thrifting. I prefer it in small towns because like there's always neat neat stuff or weird stuff or sort of like it's just different, in small towns. So I always enjoy that. I like getting old records sometimes. You just said you got a Gap sweater. I'm keeping my eye out all the time for a very specific Esprit bag that I had when I was
oh wow
in
okay, describe it.
Well, it was the only Esprit bag of its kind that I'd ever seen. Like none of my friends had this one. It had kind of like what could only be described as like a rodeo country with like jungle leaves kind of print. So it was like there were horses and it was like the wildest print you've ever seen. And I used that, like I wore like so it
had horses and a jungle on it.
Yeah, but it had other like I think there were like people sort of like maybe dressed to like be on horses too, but like I can't remember exactly what their outfits were. I don't want to say it was like cowboys really because like they're
dressed
like,
to be on horses.
I know I'm not being like extremely clear. I just remember specifically like the colors of it were kind of colors like I wouldn't even normally necessarily go for that much, but like the brown horses, the green leaves, and a slight kind of almost like just like kind of like almost yellow, but like a little like just still that earth tone hint of beige too to it, as like the actual like sort of canvas of it all. Anyway, I'd never seen
bag.
Yeah, it was the Esprit tote bag, but I'd never seen one like it. Like usually it was like one solid color and the words Esprit and stuff. This one also had small brown leather sort of details at the handle, which I thought was very cool.
But so what happened to it?
I don't know. It's just gone from my memory after basically grade 10. I have no idea what happened to it. I have no idea where it went. I cannot recall at all. But I remember like just because it was a big deal for me to get an Esprit bag. We didn't have like a ton of money or anything. And I found this one and it was weird. I must have got it at like when my mom would take us cross-border shopping at like weird outlets or something like that. I must have got one of those like kind of outlet Esprit bags or something. But like, I don't know. Anyway, I just loved it. And I've been thinking about it recently. And I want it back in my life.
It just went out in the world somewhere and eventually you will cross paths with it again.
Have you looked on eBay?
I have not. This is only this week that I started thinking about it.
What would you search for? Like cowboy jungle print Esprit bag?
Yeah, I would actually absolutely search for that.
Like which year would you say it was from?
It's hard to say. 92, 93, somewhere in there. Maybe even 91.
I do have something to announce to you that you might not be aware of. But after closing all of its stores, Esprit is coming back to Vancouver.
What?
Yeah. They're going to be on Robson Street.
I had no idea. Oh my God.
They closed apparently all their shops in 2012, and they're going to be back this year or next on Robson.
But so was it continuously operating since 2012? Or did it go away and now it's coming back?
It seems it closed most of its shops, but now they're trying to make what's that expression they were saying that they're trying to make like a new entrance into the retail market. Very strange decision at this point in time.
Is Esprit, is it a French label? Like, where is it from? Does anyone know anything about Esprit?
Not really.
No,
I mean,
really
I know
don't.
it's just like what is it like? Would they call it like regular? What's the?
It's amazing because like it was so ubiquitous in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I really don't know anything about it at all.
I honestly don't either. I just know that it was everywhere and that if you didn't have an Esprit bag, you weren't
I remember
cool.
having an Esprit sweatshirt. Like it was so like with like the logo. I could even see the logo right now.
I'm looking at the logo right now just because I.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm reading right now in an interview in Retail Insider, which I guess I just don't read enough of. Is that the brand initially began in 1968 in San Francisco by Susie and Doug Tompkins, who were the same founders of, this is fascinating, North Face.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they've always been doing sort of slightly upscale, comfy casual.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
You know what? Well, I feel like I'm ready for another go at the Esprit sweatshirt. It would be like nostalgia to wear one at this point.
Yeah.
And if I could get one of those old Club Monaco sweatshirts, I'd be done.
Honestly, I had heard rumors that Cotton Ginny was going to make a comeback, and I was very excited about that.
I'm going to do like the Benetton rugby shirt.
And then you could get the Taboo perfume. I loved the Taboo perfume and the Liz Claiborne. Gosh. Early 90s. Had a good time.
My Calvin Klein 1 was a favorite scent of mine as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. I liked Calvin Klein Eternity
that was
as well.
Everywhere.
Yeah. No, Eternity was really good, but I was very into 1. I loved the whole big bottle. And I mean, I go back sometimes and I check out the scents at Gap, but it's not the same. It'll never be the same. No,
it's never going to be quite the same.
Mm-mm. But it's amazing how like whenever you smell Calvin Klein, it's just like, transports you back to the 1991.
Instantly back in the 90s whenever I smell Calvin Klein, for sure. Obsession. Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. And now this is making me nostalgic for Body Shop and their little perfumes.
They're still around though. Body Shop's going to send you a letter saying, hey, we're still here.
No, I know they're still here. They don't have the, do you remember, I don't know if you guys would remember this, but their Dewberry perfume, like that scent Dewberry, I was my favorite and I loved it so much.
I can remember a time where getting like a little gift set from Body Shop for Christmas was
I know.
Thank you. Yeah.
That white musk scent was all over my high school.
My best friend in grade 5 was all white musk. Or no, I guess it was grade 7. Well, I mean, she was still my best friend in grade 8. But anyway, she was white musk. I was Dewberry. And then I met my other best friend, Flo, who has been on this podcast. And she, I believe she was more of like a Satsuma, like the orange. Okay. And peach. She also loved peach. Yeah, peach. Anyway.
I was I forget who said this, but online someone was like, Gen Xers like should make senior citizen homes built right on top of malls because like all of
what
Gen
a fantastic idea.
Like they love malls so much.
Yes.
Yeah, and it would just be like, oh yeah, spend your retirement years just tottering around a mall would be like heaven for Gen Xers.
Wow.
I mean, I feel that's kind of what they're doing with a lot of the mall rebuilds. Like Oak Ridge is going to have like, they're trying to turn all malls into livable cities, right? So like Brentwood Town Mall.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the fabulous Brentwood, isn't it called?
Yeah. Park Royal just needs a few more apartment buildings around it, and then they'll be on all set. And Oak Ridge is redeveloping as we speak. So
if I could move into Metrotown, I would live there right now. So, and you can live around it. I love Metrotown.
Yeah, I have not been to Metrotown in years and years. I don't enjoy indoor malls as much as I enjoy outdoor malls.
Is it once they got rid of the Rainforest Cafe, you decided that's it for me?
You know what? I did like the Rainforest Cafe, but no, I never really, I liked going in because I liked the environment of it, but I didn't really like the food. But I guess what I used to go to Metrotown for was Fruits and Passions. That's
still there.
I really love.
And candles? Don't they have candles?
They have lots of stuff, but I just order online. I just rediscovered recently, in the last year and a half, that Fruits and Passion still exists, and I can order online. And it turns out Avon bought them, and that's who ships it to me.
Wow, we went right from thrifting to spending just as much money.
Passions.
There we go.
Look, I'm going to tell you, Fruits and Passions smells fantastic. So good.
It's a soap store?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and now I know where to go Christmas shopping for you.
I just gonna let you know, I love the coriander. That's my go-to from them. And the lemon zest and the lime. The lime's also really nice. Anyway, you know what? This is a good pivot because the movie we're going to talk about comes out in 1994. And honestly, if these girls had been able to go do a little shopping, probably wouldn't have resulted in a murder. Gotta say.
Wow.
I'm going to make that strong statement right now. If they'd just been able to go and have a nice little shopping trip.
Well, I mean, yeah, like
no murder.
Yeah, exactly. They'd be hanging out at the mall instead.
I don't think malls were created in New Zealand in 1952, but there was so much to look forward to.
I mean, like, anyway, oh my God, I said all of that and just immediately was like, I hope people know I'm joking a little anyway, but also a tiny bit not. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And you're listening to Pop This. And we're doing a movie that honestly I cannot believe we have not done yet. And this is the nice thing about, like, you do this podcast for so long. I don't want to freak you guys out, but we're coming up on, like, it's gonna be like our 9th anniversary soon. Like,
oh my gosh.
I don't think so.
The podcast started in 2015. Like, it's going to be the beginning of our 9th year in November.
Wow.
This coming holiday season will be the 9th time, if we do it, that we will have confronted our truest selves with Love Actually versus The Holiday. Like, I just want to prepare you guys. Like, this is happening. But, there are still so many things we've never talked about. And somehow we had not yet done Heavenly Creatures.
Amazing, really, yeah.
I feel like our Octobers are getting progressively darker in terms of, like, a tone. Like, these couple movies that we're watching in late October, then, like, we're doing Heavenly Creatures this week and we're doing a horror movie the following week. It's just like, this has been a hard viewing week for me.
We didn't even do a whole month. Like, often we do a witch month or, like, whatever. We didn't even do a whole month. because we went
for the days of Witch Month.
We went hard on these two, and I will.
Oh, yes. Remember Kiki's delivery service?
Yeah,
that's how we used to spend Halloween.
That is drastically rewriting our history. But we did spend 1 week of Halloween doing Kiki's delivery service. That was sweet. Instead, we get this. And,
instead, we get this. Yeah, yeah.
The friendship is unhealthy.
Little toxic.
Oh my God.
I guess.
I, neither of you are going to be surprised by this. I love this movie.
You loved it.
Yeah.
I love this movie.
I knew you would.
Could not believe I had never seen it. Wow, it is incredible.
I'm a little shocked that it's like we watched it by streaming it on YouTube, but it's otherwise like why isn't it available?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
like Peter Jackson's the director. It has like big stars in it. Like, why has it disappeared?
There's possibly some like litigation stuff is one of like Carlos's theories about its distribution.
One of the real, I mean, it's a true story as we know, but one of
based
the
on a true story. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it really happened. I'm just saying that. Yeah. The one of the well, they were a young girl then, but a grown woman became quite a successful mystery writer in England, right? So she might, so she might be not so thrilled with this.
So not to get too spoilery for everyone, but she died earlier this year. So maybe it will go to streaming or be available at some point since they no longer have to sort of contend possibly with her estate.
Right.
I don't know.
That's okay.
That's a sort of like but I don't know exactly why it is not available to stream anywhere. I just theoretically, I think there could be some stuff about,
because it's totally baffling. Like it's a really like for all the reasons we mentioned. Plus, it's a really great movie. You know that you would think that people would want to go back and revisit and watch, especially because it's the film debut of Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky. And so obviously like their fans would probably be interested in seeing it. So I mean, it's just baffling.
It is a cult classic, and it's a really beloved piece of like queer cinema, and it's like important in the sort of lesbian canon cinema and stuff like that. But I do think like this, I'm going to read, I know we haven't even talked about the background and stuff like that, but I just want to say like there's a quote from Juliet, who later became this incredible crime writer named Anne Perry, and her identity was revealed in 1994 around the same time as the movie came out, Heavenly Creatures. And one of the things, so this is a quote from her, it seemed so unfair. Everything I had worked to achieve as a decent member of society was threatened. And once again, my life was being interpreted by someone else. It had happened in court when, as a minor, I wasn't allowed to speak, and I heard all these lies being told. And now there was a film, but nobody bothered to talk to me. I knew nothing about it until the day before release. All I could think of was that my life would fall apart and that it might kill my mother. Interesting choice of words on that closed quote, but I do think that there's like some icky ethics stuff, right? Mm-hmm. About like, I mean, even murderers have the right to their own story, but everything that they, I think Peter Jackson did an incredible job, and Fran Walsh did an incredible job with this screenplay. But I'm assuming everything that they took is from public record, and then there was so much sensationalism around the trial of Pauline and Juliet. They're reading Pauline, all of her diaries from when she's 14 and 15 are just read into court transcripts, and the letters that they wrote each other. Like, I can understand why that would feel pretty terrible and shocking 40 years after you've done this really terrible thing. 35 years after you've served your prison time, you've changed your name, you've gotten a new identity, you've been this like best-selling crime writer. Like, I think everything kind of blew up, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was like legal factors into the release.
Mm-hmm. I think that too. Yeah.
Anyway, Lisa, do you want to read the background?
Sure, I do. Heavenly Creatures is a 1994 New Zealand biographical psychological drama film directed by Peter Jackson from a screenplay he co-wrote with his partner Fran Walsh and starring Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey in their feature film debuts, with supporting roles by Sarah Pierce, Diana Kent, Clive Morrison, Simon O'Connor. It is based on the notorious 1954 Parker Hume murder case in Christchurch. The film focuses on the relationship between two teenage girls, Pauline Parker and Juliette Hume, which culminates in the murder of Parker's mother. The events of the film span the period from their meeting in 1952 to the murder in 1954. The film opened in 1994 at the 51st Venice International Film Festival, where it won the Silver Lion and became one of the best received films of the year. Reviewers praised most aspects of the production, with particular attention given to the performances by the previously unknown Winslet and Lynskey, as well as for Jackson's directing. The film received an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay.
Thank you so much.
It's amazing that you watch this movie and think of like what great performances Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey do. And that, like, you can see from, like, literally this first movie that they're in that they're really great at acting. And that, like, they eventually both become super successful.
Yeah, they're extraordinary. Like, just, wow. Every time Melanie Lynskey has to scrunch up her face and furrow her brow and look out, and, like, you can feel Pauline's just like that aimless fury that has nowhere to go. It's so good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ugh. AG, do you want to read the synopsis?
Sure. Wealthy and precocious teenager Juliette transfers from England to Christchurch, New Zealand with her family and forms a bond with the quiet, brooding Pauline through their shared love of handsome big screen tenor Mario Lanza and games of make-believe. But when their parents begin to suspect that their increasingly intense friendship is becoming unhealthy, the girls decide to run away to America, hatching a dark plan for those who threaten to keep them apart. And that is from Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Okay. AG, you had never seen it before either, right?
No, never.
Okay. So what were your first impressions?
I mean, because when you watch this movie, it's one of those things where they show you like the final scene right at the beginning. And so you kind of understand what has happened sort of like through the whole movie. And so I was kind of like bracing myself for it to be a very dark and terrible story. And it was, but you know, like, I think it's like I said, like, I'm really surprised that this isn't a more sort of well-known movie that everybody talks about, because it's so well made, and because it's not just like about it not being available for streaming. I just like never have really heard anyone talk about this movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's really well made. The performances are great. The story is gripping, and yeah, like it's a really great movie. I don't know if that's the word, great movie, but about like a terrible thing that's happened, and you know, and you can sort of like end this friendship between these two girls at the time and what happens to it, and you kind of like can see like, oh yeah, like I understand intense friendships can get like a little unhinged, but yeah, and I don't know. I'm rambling on, but like I enjoyed this movie, and yeah, I'm glad it kind of put a capper on a dark movie watching week. But you know, thumbs up.
Skipping
like
to the end.
So,
Yeah,
it's like
the end
so inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, you had seen it before.
I had seen it before, and I think the hardest thing about watching it again was having to live through that ending, which I think is probably one of the more brutal murder scenes. And I've seen a lot of movies where there's murder. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably a gross number at this point. But I think the way they made it so human, the sounds that the mother made, the shock, the brutality once they got going. They're such young girls. It was
the longest walk in the woods you've ever seen.
Just, it was so inhuman. So that clouded me. I mean, as pointed out, you do know that obviously that's why you're watching it. So you know that's what's about to come. And they do start the movie off with these girls covered in blood screaming, which is interesting. It's like, it's odd because that's your only way of sort of remembering that they are actually horrified by what they did, is that beginning of the movie where they're screaming. But then again, I don't know if they were trying to say, we don't know what happened. We just found her dead and we're covered in blood. I don't know if they tried to pretend that they didn't do it.
Yeah, I felt like because I had never seen the movie either, but I felt like I was like, wow, these are interesting acting choices on the parts of Melanie and Kate, because they do a successful job of seeming like they're obviously faking it, but at the same time, they are also kind of horrified by what they have done, because something that seemed like very theoretical and like, these girls had built up this like very rich fantasy life. They believed that they were part of I think it's the Fourth Order or something like that. They had they were the moral superiority, like just a general superiority above other people. And suddenly they're literally drenched in blood and have just beaten Pauline's mother to death. And so I think it's such a gripping portrayal of sort of like real hysteria and fake hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it so well together. It's chilling. It is so chilling.
It's chilling. That is the correct word for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Further to that, if you may not want to know what I'm about to tell you, and I'm so sorry in advance, but they actually, I think, kind of like you were talking about how it's like one of the most brutal murder scenes. Well, I think they probably could have taken it further if they'd wanted to. She had been hit 45 times.
45?
45 times. Which is a devastating number. And it very much puts, I don't know. The number is so specific and it's so high, and the idea of them taking turns, Anyway, so, a lot of like really, really horrible, real life stuff here. And at the same time, I very much, I love how the film is made. I love how they bring the fantasy elements of their world into each other's, like into play. I really appreciated the ways that they sort of show how the girls have this intimacy that goes from just sort of this like intellectual and creative intimacy to an actual physical intimacy, and watching them together and like sort of seeing them kind of have this like tender love for each other when we know there's a lot of really sort of like dark obsessive stuff surrounding them. Like, I just thought the film did such a really beautiful job of allowing us to understand how they sought refuge with each other, and like how much they both felt things to this very like sort of like just like these huge epic feelings. Like when Juliet is worried about being abandoned by her parents, and she goes running through the hills and the camera is like up high and sweeping across these fields, and it's like suddenly we're in the Sound of Music. And then Pauline, who honestly goes by Paul most of the time, and I've referred to her as Paul most of the time, is like holding Juliet in her arms as like she weeps for like, I was like, oh my God, you know what? Honestly, I absolutely did stuff like that with some of my closest female friends when I was a teenager, because the feelings were so big. They were so big. And I feel like this movie really honors it. Like, they're not playing it for laughs. They're not like, it's not like kind of like, they're not making fun of these girls. Like, they are taking them very seriously in the same way that these girls take each other very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely appreciate like that feeling as a teenager where you don't have any control over your life, and you know, like you feel things so intensely, and you may get separated from a best friend because of like your parents deciding to move you somewhere, or you meet them on vacation and you probably won't ever see them again. Or like, I think like it's all very relatable, even though it seems like they're sort of intense and just like it leads to this unimaginable thing happening. But I think it's like very human at the same time, because like I think everyone can relate to that kind of feeling as a teenager.
Oh yeah, it's interesting though. Like when something's a true story, it's very different than when something's made up. Because when something's made up,
Yes.
you do want to have, for some reason, you're like, even in this story, actually, the same thing though. You're looking for signs that, because to go from what you're talking about to murdering your mother is a giant leap. It is like, obviously, it happened so I mean, I can't think of another time. I'm sure it has, but I don't think of one right now. But just you're looking for all these signs when you're watching this movie. Like, what is it? And you can't find it. There's nothing that, and you think, well, that's right, because it just is a true story.
Yeah, like I think actually that's kind of the genius of the movie, is they're not trying to explain it, but they are providing context clues.
Yes.
And I think it's those context clues that like, I was thinking about it a little bit, like, I'll go back to my thought in a second, but I just Jamie Barnard for the New York Daily News in her review in 1994 compliments Jackson for the amount of humor, but also the contributing factors that he acknowledges: rigid schooling, a mutual affection for Mario Lanza, who's also my grandmother's favorite. So that was really fun to watch this movie with her. The problems of being special in an environment that prizes mediocrity, the girls' fears, and the confinement and abandonment from like being sick children and stuff. Like, and so I was thinking a lot about that abandonment part, because I was, Juliet's abandonment issues are pretty epic. And you kind of don't, like, at least for me, at first, when she's crying in the hills, I'm like, well, this is a little overblown. But then you understand, no, she has been abandoned by these people that she calls her parents a lot. They just leave her in a TB ward with no qualms or concern for her at all.
For 4 months.
Yeah. And then Pauline and her get to share this, like, build this very intense universe through the, like, writing to each other, and especially writing to each other as their characters in their universe. And then at the same time, Pauline is then preyed upon by this, like, older lodger in her family home, instantly blamed by her mother for, being a quote unquote slut, like bringing shame on the family, et cetera, et cetera. Like, so like they sort of lay all of this groundwork, but like what becomes the part that like is utterly impossible to truly comprehend is like how it does escalate to where murder is like the only out for these two, because like, there's so many other outs.
They could have just run away. Like literally just could have run away. Yeah. I mean,
but they, we see them how they tried to get passports and they couldn't, like for Pauline, like, so they're felled at every sort of possibility, to the extent where the only thing that they can think is that Juliet's parents, because they are separating and lackadaisical and don't care enough about her, like the punishment to Pauline's mother is that she cares about her daughter. Like that's the really, truly horrifying part, is that she is the one who won't give up on her kid. And so that's why they have to kill her. And that's really, that's so heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I think like Melanie Lynskey does such a good job as to why she sees that as a burden and a suffocation and a punishment, because Juliet lets her be Charles. Juliet lets her be Paul. Juliet lets her have this life that, her mother's never going to let her have.
But I think also like the constraints of it being based on a true story is that, like, I think if it was fiction, they would have been able to write a bit of a ending, because, like, all I can think about is in this movie is like what happens afterwards, and how, you know, like they were sentenced to 5 years in prison, I think.
Yep.
And then, but like I was reading that like one of the things attached to it was like they couldn't contact each other after they got out of jail.
That was refuted actually on a true crime blog. Apparently that was just myth making in the media apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, did they, so then
yeah, that's what I wonder too.
Like what, like how, I don't know. Like
they won't say if they did.
I want to hear like what their feelings were as afterwards. And we don't kind of get that in this story really. Cause like, I guess it's unknown, but yeah, I kind of craved that while I was watching. It's just like, I wanted to see them immediately afterwards and just like know like what, if did they have regret immediately afterwards, or like did they have regret after they served their prison sentences as adults? Like what? Yeah,
I mean, I want to know those things too. I wanted to know those things too, so I went and did some research after. But I don't think it belongs in the movie necessarily. Like I think the movie is specific to the friendship, the relationship, and then the murder. And I feel like if they had turned it into a courtroom drama, like that's a whole other second film. Like they really wanted to stick to I think it comes back to what there's a line, and I have no idea if this is a line that Juliet actually said that Pauline wrote down in the diary or not. I don't know. But when Juliet says, "Cheer up, all the best people have bad chests and bone diseases. It's all frightfully romantic."
Yes,
I feel like that. I felt like that was like on a Pinterest board for the mood of this film, and that's what they stuck to, like old Hollywood glam, the sort of the sort of fantasy world that they were sort of building together, and the light delusions as like a shared coping mechanism between them. Like that's sort of what the world, and if they go to like the trial and they go to like anything after that, like it kind of it doesn't become about heavenly creatures anymore, you know?
Needed to see a trial. I just kind of I wanted to know like immediately in the aftermath if they still lived in that fantasy world and still believed that what they did, they had to do what they had to do.
Well, because I love this kind of thing, and I had actually forgotten that I knew this story already, because sometimes stuff just leaves my head. So it did come out the same year as the film that Anne Perry was Juliet, and I think it was 20 million books in circulation, and had been writing Victorian era crime novels, and sort of writing. So all the writing that she was doing with Pauline, she did turn that into something else, but she got a new identity after her 5 years. They did try to plead insanity, but that was rejected, I believe, when they were at trial. What the courts focused on was obviously the murder, but also their lesbian relationship, which lesbianism was still classified as a mental illness in New Zealand, I think until 1986, apparently. So let that sit there for a while. Anyway, and it was like apparently like the scandalous trial of like the 50s, because obviously people were obsessed with it. And then so Pauline got a new identity, and apparently moved to England eventually after she was allowed to leave New Zealand, and allegedly was running a children's writing school. And as she got older, she became a devout Roman Catholic. She has never spoken about anything, but in 1996, she released a statement through her sister and expressed strong remorse for having killed her mother. Her sister further stated that, quote, Pauline committed the most terrible crime and has spent 40 years repaying it by keeping away from people and doing her own little thing. after it happened. She was very sorry about it. It took her about 5 years to realize what she had done. So the whole 5 years she was in prison is how long it took her to really understand what she had done. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's weak. That's like that is not satisfying at all. It took her 5 years. She's been sitting with it for 40. I mean, first of all, I just think obviously killing anyone, unless you're just defending yourself, is just horrific. But your own mother, gee.
I mean, it's, I think she was 15 and Juliet was 16. And it's obviously horrific and obviously terrible. But I kind of am blown away that she's just never talked about it. Like I like, there's something so interesting to me that like she has never talked about it. Whereas Juliet, and again, kind of unsurprising given what we're shown of Pauline and Juliet in the film, that Juliet then reinvents herself and becomes one of the most celebrated crime writers of the 20th century.
I wonder if you could read her stories and sort of find any clues or insight into the crime she herself committed.
I feel like people have probably tried to do that work. I haven't read it yet. I feel like a lot of stuff maybe will come out now that she has deceased. Like she died in April of this year. But you know what? She had actually moved to Hollywood only 5 years ago because she was going to be turning more of her material into film and television. And she apparently had a heart attack late last fall, or maybe December, November. And then she'd been in hospital ever since and then died in April of this year.
But, I mean, I guess for her, there's a little bit more room in the sense that it wasn't her mother. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? It's still, no, I'm not taking anything away, but still there is I guess she got a little bit more of a pass. Is that right?
I mean, she probably got more of a pass, but I gotta say the fact that quote I read from her earlier was that all I could think of was that my life would fall apart and that it might kill my mother is a wild choice of words when you helped murder your friend's mother.
Yeah.
And as a writer, she knows what's leaving her mouth. And that's very interesting statement to me.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, like you said, it was quite a case in New Zealand, like a sensational case. I wonder if it was just one of those stories that Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh grew up knowing that was kind of like, just part of the ether.
I would imagine, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I think that I don't even know if they would have been born, actually. It probably just...
Yeah, right, yeah.
Like, that's a pretty long time ago. I don't exactly know how old Peter Jackson is at this point, but I just... or Fran Walsh, for that matter. But, like, you would... Like, that's, like, the kind of defining, like, multiple generations sort of defining murder. Because not only did it get blamed on them being... depicted as lesbians and assumed to be lesbians and them having had a sexual relationship, which incidentally Juliet later denied, by the way. But, Pauline's diaries, I think we still have to respect that Pauline's version of their relationship has merit as well. The fact that they were teenagers and girls and potentially together was like this powder keg of three kind of like unbelievably salacious elements. Mm-hmm. And like no one could believe it. And it became a whole thing about like the moral failings of the culture that teenagers and teenage girls could like experiment sexually and then become just so depraved that they would like lead them to murder. So a lot of damaging tropes came out of this one.
Yeah. It's just such a like you said, they did a wonderful job of the movie. But there's something you aren't really, at least I wasn't, able to kind of just suspend myself and try and look at some of the beauty and joy that they were feeling when I knew where this was all going.
Yeah, I mean, I wish like maybe they should do like a different movie that's like based on that friendship and is fictional though, but all like doesn't end in a murder.
Yeah, there you go. Then
they're just like they just run away.
That's a different film, and I think that would be a great film too. But like, I really appreciated the way that they. Well, obviously, I like the dark stuff. I like the idea that we never know who's going to do something really heinous and terrible, and people, especially when they sort of join forces in these like surprising ways, sometimes their sort of obsessions with each other like just really do bring out the absolute worst.
It must be so surreal to be an adult because like, you know how we kind of can look back at stuff that happened in our high school years, like, something wild happens in your town or some notorious thing. And you think like, that was crazy that happened to those people.
Yeah.
When I was 16, like it was the talk of the town or whatever. But to have it, to be that person that it happened to and, like to think about it decades later when you're a completely different person, that must be so surreal because like you're thinking like you were that person, but it was also a completely different person. And, like that you were the thing that was like the wild thing that happened in that town.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this is absolutely like, I cannot really fathom much wilder happening. You know what I mean? Like, I think like, yeah, I mean, I too would love to hear, Pauline's reflections on things. Like her silence is her choice and that's fine. But
she's still alive then, right?
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that her death would get the same kind of notice that like Juliet as Anne Perry did. Cause like,
yeah, she's a famous writer and yeah.
Exactly. But like, I think so Roger Ebert's review has some, I think like there's some interesting things in there. There's two things I want to point out about his review. One is that he manages to include a line kind of blaming Juliet's mom for some of what happens. So he says, they become intoxicated by their friendship, rushing headlong everywhere with squeals and giggles, giddy with delight at the private world they are creating. Their parents are out of the loop, especially Juliet's mother, a psychologist who is much more concerned with proving her own fading sexuality than with communicating with her daughter.
Okay, I did not. Yeah, that's wild.
That is an absolutely
projection.
Absolutely bonkers reading of that particular mother-daughter relationship. I understand she is consumed by her affair, but I don't think it's about her proving her own fading sexuality. She's just a neglectful mother.
Yeah, who's having an affair with a cad. I mean, that's...
I mean, her husband is equally neglectful. Like, what a wild, wild thing to write in your review. But then he goes on to make a really, I think, beautiful point. He says, what makes Jackson's film enthralling and frightening is the way it shows these two unhappy girls creating an alternative world so safe and attractive they thought it was worth killing for.
Yeah.
I think that's a very generous read on what happened with them. And I that's what I keep thinking about too.
Yeah, and that's why, all I can think about is whether at any point in their adulthood, did they ever write each other a letter? Did they ever have a phone call?
Yeah.
Did they ever,
yeah. No, I thought about that too. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think one of the frustrations we all have about looking back at these morality type police eras, is that you're right. Like Juliet's parents were completely neglectful unless there was homosexuality involved.
Yeah.
Perfectly willing to leave her for 4 months in a convalescent hospital. But whoa.
God forbid she make out with her friend Pauline.
Yeah, that we can't have. That can't. And I mean, with Pauline's family, they were just very, very conservative, very small people. You know, the idea of something like that, it was just, you just keep your head down. Even that one line that, just crushed me was when, just before she dies and they're having tea, and Pauline says to her mom, have the last cake. And Juliet and the mom says, I'm watching my figure. And you're just, oh my God, you have no idea how ridiculous you sound. And as we know what's about to happen to you, especially. Yeah, like, it's just so, like, why is this frumpy, you know what I mean? Keeper of a whatever, a boarding house. You know, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life?
Yeah. And
it's
also
really sad.
A reminder to enjoy your crumpet.
Wow, that's I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh, thank you. You know what? Finally, I have not, like, this episode, finally, the first time in the history of this podcast, I have not been the one to make the worst comment. Thank you, Iggy. I love you so much right now. Thank you. Oh my God. Just always enjoy your crumpet. Well, I mean, ... Look, we need to laugh. We need to release. It's a tense episode, you know? It's a tense episode in history, a tense film. It's but I gotta say, I think it's brilliant, and I love this film, and it pops for me.
It pops for me. It's a beautiful film. The story is well worth telling. I think it's incredible. I think it's brave to make the story. I mean, I just can't imagine the pitch meeting for it. But it's pretty amazing it got made. But then again, like I said, like every country or even cities have notorious trials. And I think that, if you grow up with something, that you have this itch almost to tell that story.
Yeah, and I mean, I think aside from this sort of the story being like this gripping thing to watch, it's like you're seeing, like Peter Jackson's early work.
Yeah.
You're seeing Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky's in their debut. It's just like you're seeing like these people who eventually become like, giants in the industry, at their very beginning, and it's such a notable movie just because of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We love to leave our episodes on something we also recommend. I'm just going to nominate myself to go first in a rare show of dominance. It's a simple pleasure, but Alex Cuba, who is a BC-based musician, did a really wonderful Tiny Desk NPR session. And if you've never listened to Alex Cuba's music before, he's great. He, records in his own studio. He lives, I think, in Smithers, and has won Latin Grammys, non-Latin Grammys, like the other Grammys. He numerous Juno Awards. He's just really really talented, and making incredible music here in BC. He has been here for a long time. He's from Cuba originally, and we're just like, I don't know. I think we're so lucky to have him making music in BC. I think it's a wild treat, and now everyone can kind of like see him on the platform he deserves at an NPR Tiny Desk.
Which, are they ending
agreed.
or just the person who produces them leaving?
He's just leaving.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Alex Kidd deserves worldwide acclaim.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's just
so good.
so talented. Yeah. All right.
mean, he already has it to a certain extent, but
he sure
should
does.
Be even,
He's
he
got
should be even more
Grammys
famous.
and
he's got Grammys. He's got Grammys and Latin Grammys and all kinds of other stuff. But like, I just feel like it's just like so cool to have someone like that incredible, like living in sort of like Smithers.
I know.
It's cool. Yay, Smithers. All right. Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, so there was this rom-com that came to Netflix, I think it was last year, and I don't know why I put it off because it was like, felt like it was delivered to me, but I finally watched The Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum.
Is it good? I haven't seen it.
It almost like, I mean, they just lifted the blueprint from Romancing the Stone, which, as we know, is one of my favorite movies. It was a lot of fun. It was certainly 2 hours that I did not mind spending. It was ridiculous. It was silly. And it was a lot of fun. And boy, after a movie like this, you need that, as we say, that palate cleanser. Just click on to The Lost City.
Cool. AG, how about you?
So I did some VIFing in the last week, and this is predictable, but my favorite movie that I saw was The Boy and The Heron, which was the latest Miyazaki Hayao film from Studio Ghibli. And I don't know how to describe it, except that I just wanted to burst into tears at the end of the movie. Like, it's so moving. And for Studio Ghibli fans, it's just like, I don't know, this masterwork that references various other Studio Ghibli movies, and it talks about, it's based on a book called How Do You Live, and it's about a boy whose mother dies in a fire, and it's somewhat about him traveling to different points in the timeline to try and find her and try to reconnect with her, and he sees her as a little girl and stuff like that. It's beautiful animation, as you would expect, and the story is amazing. And it's going to come out in theaters in December. And I know that's a long time from now, but everybody should plan to see it because it's just such a beautiful film.
Yay!
Yay!
I can't wait. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You could rate and review us 5 stars if you'd like.
Yeah, well, and I think people do like, don't they? Yeah. And thanks, as always, to Andrea Gin, who is our co-host and producer here for this fantastic podcast that, man, it's been around a long time. And I hope you enjoyed every episode as much as we have had making them.
9 years.
Wow.
It's going to be 9 years, guys. It's going to be 9 years. God. I know.
Amazing.
Wild.
Yeah.
All right.
See you all.
Thank you.
Bye.